Hello everyone, this is your Daily Dose of Internet.
Why are you in a wheelchair when I saw you get out of your car and walk?
Senator Tobey, please.
Amen. Senator Manchin, on that, thank you. Thanks for being here today. Mr. Raven, I want to ask about some of the Navy's training materials. In his first act as SecDef, Secretary Austin ordered to stand down for training on extremism in the ranks. Each service had to give this training, correct?
That's correct, sir.
How many Navy sailors received that training, do you think?
I believe that was force-wide, so all sailors, all Marines.
Active and reserve?
I believe so, sir.
That's about 350,000 people in the Navy alone. Are you familiar with the training overall?
Generally, I'm not familiar with each product, sir.
Okay, our office obtained a copy of the brief that was given to every single sailor officer in the U.S. Navy. One slide says, and I quote, "I come from a very conservative religious family and have views on marriage, abortion, and LGBTQ rights that are often not considered mainstream, but are in keeping with my religious beliefs. I often discuss these issues online and on social media forums maintained by my church. Will I get in trouble for my post?" Are you familiar with this Navy training that went out to all of our sailors?
I'm not familiar with that part, sir.
Okay, I've got a little slide here I want to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Thank you. You know, mainstream media means normal. So the Navy is implying here that conservative religious people are abnormal. Kind of concerns me.
U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan in the state of New York, city of Manhattan, ruled last week that the upcoming jury for the E. Jean Carroll assault and defamation trial that Donald Trump will be facing beginning on April 25th, by the way, that jury is to remain 100% anonymous, according to an order from Judge Kaplan late last week. And the reason that Judge Kaplan cited for keeping the jury anonymous, not just their names, their employers, everything about these people's histories, so that nobody can know who these people are. And the judge says he has to do this to protect them from Donald Trump's attacks, which in turn could lead to his supporters threatening or perhaps committing horrible things against these particular individuals. Let me read this. And I love that he's using Trump's own actions against him. This is brilliant. Mr. Trump repeatedly has attacked courts, judges, various law enforcement officials, and other public officials, and even individual jurors in other matters. If jurors' identities were disclosed, there would be a strong likelihood of unwanted media attention to the jurors, influence attempts, and/or of harassment, or worse, of jurors by supporters of Mr. Trump. So Judge Kaplan, after witnessing everything that happened last week, of course, with Donald Trump's attacks on Alvin Bragg, his attacks on other prosecutors, the attacks of dehumanizing them, calling them animals, say they're working for lunatics. At one point, he called Alvin Bragg a psychopath that hates the USA. So the judge was like, listen, I have to protect these people because their ruling, right, their decision will basically tell us whether or not the former president of the United States assaulted a woman in a dressing room in a department store in the 90s. This is a big one. These jurors could hold Donald Trump's fate in their hands. Now, to be clear, this is not a criminal trial. The statute of limitations on the criminal side has passed. So he will not and cannot go to jail for this. But if they rule against Trump, these jurors, they're basically saying, yeah, he did this. And that is going to be a blow to Donald Trump's reputation that should, I can't guarantee it, but it should turn off every non-MAGA hat wearing person in this country. Therefore making it to where he could literally never win another election, probably not even get business deals because of what that ruling will label him forever.
So friends, in yesterday's Justice Matters video, we talked about Donald Trump's threats against New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg, the very person investigating Donald Trump's crimes, the very person who seems to be on the eve of indicting Donald Trump for his New York State crimes. We talked about Donald Trump posting how there would be death and destruction if he was indicted. We talked about Donald Trump posting a picture of himself with a baseball bat about to take a swing at Alvin Bragg. And we talked about how those threats constituted violations of New York state law. Newsweek actually did an article about yesterday's Justice Matters video. There's the headline. Trump just committed these new crimes in New York. The state law Donald Trump violated is Section 195.05, and that New York state law reads, in pertinent part, a person is guilty of obstructing governmental administration in the second degree when that person prevents or attempts to prevent a public servant from performing an official function by means of intimidation. And that is precisely what Donald Trump has done, prompting me to say, friends, when the New York grand jurors reconvene on Monday, they should receive additional evidence from prosecutors of Donald Trump's death and destruction threats in violation of Section 195.05, and they should also receive this post. Okay, friends, let's turn to Donald Trump's new federal crimes, and this one is actually pretty straightforward. Now, the federal statute has a somewhat curious name. It's 18 United States Code, Section 875, and it's titled Interstate Communications. Well, let's read the law together. Whoever transmits in interstate or foreign commerce any communication containing any threat to kidnap any person or any threat to injure the person of another shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Okay, friends, let's break it down to its essential elements. Anyone who transmits in interstate commerce a threat to injure a person has committed a 5-year federal felony. Now, posting something on the internet equals transmitting it in interstate commerce. And this picture depicting you taking a bat to your prosecutor equals a threat to another. And Donald Trump should be prosecuted both locally in New York and federally because justice matters. Yes, we are impatient. Yes, we've been waiting forever for justice to come for Donald Trump. Hang in there a little longer, friends. And as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.
When a man comes to me, tears in his eyes, he's at almost nothing in the polls, and he's fighting somebody that's at 42, and he's got almost $30 million in the bank. He's at almost nothing, he's got no cash. And I said, I can't give you an endorsement. There's no way you can win. You're dead. I didn't know him very well. But I saw him, so he came and he really wanted. I said, you can't win, can you? How do you can win? Sir, if you endorse me, I'll win. Please. Please, sir, endorse me. And I said, all right, let's give it a shot.
Wasn't that kind of a tepid response?
But when you're getting a guy, so he gets a nomination because of you, he wins the election because of you, 2 years later, the fake news is up there saying, will you run against the president? Will you run? And he says, I have no comment. I say, that's not supposed to happen. I have no comment. No. So I'm not a big fan, but I love, that's right, he's a disciple of Paul Ryan. He is actually a disciple. That's why he wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, again, not a strong reaction from the crowd on that. We'll see. By the way, to complicate things even a little bit more, I have seen the beginning of some state-level polling for Ron DeSantis versus Trump coming out.
We have a social contagion in this country regarding gender dysphoria and children who are being told that they have been born in the wrong body. And when they enter onto apps like TikTok...
House Republicans at this point. You have no jurisdiction over them. Honest to God, if they wanted to go ahead and hit you with charges of obstruction, they could probably do that as well. Because what you're doing is you're tying them up so that they cannot continue their actual work, which is your goal. Let's be clear here. Congress has no authority over Bragg's office. These staffers that are calling and harassing Bragg's office, they don't even know why they're calling, other than Jim Jordan told you so. You don't know what you're seeking. You don't know what kind of information you want. But I have to think that you know that it's illegal what you're doing because you have no jurisdiction over them, and they are protected by the New York State Constitution from having to turn anything over to you. So at this point, if I were the prosecutor in Manhattan, first of all, things would have been a lot different. Trump would have been prosecuted last year. But if I were the prosecutor in Manhattan right now, I would personally answer the phone the next time one of these little a-holes calls, and I would say, listen here, bud, what's your name? Hey, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write your name down on this piece of paper right here. You call my office one more time, and I will charge you with obstruction of justice and impeding a state investigation. We are doing real legitimate work, but every time you call, we got to take ourselves off the case to answer the phone to deal with this bullshit. So you call my office, or if anybody from your office calls one more time, your ass is on the line, and I will hit you with charges so fast it'll make your head spin. Are we clear? That's what Alvin Bragg needs to do. Because these a-holes aren't going to stop. They're going to keep doing it. And you can absolutely threaten to hit them with those obstruction charges, dude. You can do that. It's well within the realm of possibility. So maybe it's time to fight fire with a little bit of fire here because they're not going to back off until you make them.
The law should always take into account someone's popularity. I think that's I mean, what's happened to our country? It's as though you can't even commit financial fraud anymore. You can't inflate the value of your properties when you need a loan and then deflate it with taxes. I mean, the next thing you know, they're going to send you to jail instead of your lawyer and your accountant and your campaign manager and everyone else around you. The idea that someone may face accountability who's that rich and powerful is outrageous. and this country shouldn't stand for.
but what if it turns out to be his get out of jail free pass? It's his path to, people will see him as a martyr.
Okay.
You're okay with that? He could become president again.
He could become president anyway. Fareed, we either have the rule of law or we have no rule of law. The rule of law does not take into account if that might make you a martyr to somebody.
Right-wing Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona went on the most deranged rant.
General Milley, instead of fulfilling his constitutional duty to serve Donald Trump, the duly elected president at the time, representing the voice of the American people, conspired with both Nancy Pelosi and foreign adversary, the CCP, on separate occasions to hatch plans to overthrow the sitting president of the United States. What insurrection, you say?
Yeah, you heard him right. Gosar is accusing General Mark Milley of conspiring with Nancy Pelosi and China to overthrow former President Donald Trump. Welcome to TYT Overruled. I am your host, Adrienne Lawrence. Before we get into what the hearing was actually supposed to be about, check out the responses to Congressman Gosar's wild conspiracy theory.
General Milley conspired with both Nancy Pelosi and foreign adversary, the CCP, on separate occasions to hatch plans to overthrow the sitting president of the United States.
Jennifer Hayden tweeted this. This is what happens when you make your uncle's 1998 forward email of stupidity and conspiracy a member of Congress and put him on a committee. Another account tweeted, even for completely deranged Gosar, this is something special. And conservative Joe Walsh chimed in, I served in Congress with Paul. He needed to resign 10 years ago. So you may be wondering what topic Gosar was supposed to be addressing at that hearing, right? Well, I'll let Congressman Maxwell Frost tell you.
This is not an issue of wokeness. We're talking about the women in our military that are serving our country, defending our freedom, that deserve to not be assaulted in the workplace. And we, as members of Congress, need to look at how are we protecting them? How are we ensuring that the quality of life for our service members are better than it is right now?
That's right. The conversation was supposed to be on the state of the military and its low recruitment levels. But of course, the right wanted to talk about wokeness. And, well, Representative Jamie Raskin, he made clear that ain't it.
Lieutenant General Barno, are there any studies which document the rather extraordinary claim being bandied about today that fear of wokeism or political correctness or what have you is actually depressing recruitment to the military?
I'm not aware of any studies that actually have any factual data that support that assertion. I also know that at least two service chiefs, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Berger, and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General C.Q. Brown, have both said that wokeism is not, there's no such thing as not affecting military readiness. They see no evidence that this is a problem inside their two services, and I think that applies in the recruiting domain as well. But no, in terms of actual evidence, I've not seen that.
So why aren't folks joining the military, which happens to struggle with racial and gender segregation that runs rampant?
Here's one theory. Potential recruits are not afraid of going woke. They're afraid of going broke. Pay and benefits are so low that the RAND Corporation estimates that more than a quarter, 26% of our military service members are food insecure, and 14% actually use food assistance programs like food banks to meet their family needs.
When we're here talking about wokeness, where is the outrage on ensuring that we can raise wages of military members? 74% of our military budget goes towards contractors. Why are we not talking about that? Why are we not talking about what happened just last week on this committee in this room where my friends on the other side of the aisle were gunning and going for telework, which military spouses disproportionately use to help support their household because the wages are not where it needs to be. So this is about politics, not about policy. It's not about things rooted in facts, and the facts show, there's no data that shows that wokeness is a part of the problems we're seeing in terms of recruitment. Thank you. I yield back.
I am really, truly grateful for individuals like Frost and Raskin who are looking to make change and to speak truth to the actual issues, rather than proffer out conspiracy theories like Representative Gosar. And we, the people, we really deserve wild change. We deserve so much more than wild rants, but that seems to be all we're getting from the right. And they really seem to wonder why people aren't joining the military when the government's leadership looks like this. Let's be real. Then again, those are just my thoughts. You let me know yours in the comments below. Hit that like and follow button, and thanks for watching.
Aren't you guys tired of covering this? Aren't you guys tired of being here and having to cover all of these mass shootings? I'm from Highland Park.
The audio briefly cuts out, but then it comes back.
Family vacation with my son, visiting my sister-in-law. I have been lobbying in D.C. since we survived a mass shooting in July. I have met with over 130 lawmakers. How is this still happening? How are our children still dying, and why are we failing them? Gun violence is the #1 killer of children and teens. It has overtaken cars. Assault weapons are contributing to the border crisis and fentanyl. We are arming cartels with our guns and our loose gun laws, and these shootings and these mass shootings will continue to happen until our lawmakers step up and pass gun safety legislation.
Our colleagues embrace what's called the insurrectionist theory of the Second Amendment. Our colleague, Mr. Gates, says the Second Amendment is, quote,
about maintaining within the citizenry the ability to maintain an armed rebellion against the government if that becomes necessary.
Our colleague Chip Roy says the Second Amendment was designed purposefully to empower the people
to be able to resist the force of tyranny used against them to step over their natural rights given to them by God.
Congressman Boebert says the Second Amendment, quote,
it has nothing to do with hunting, unless you're talking about hunting tyrants, maybe.
Well, this theory is completely debunked and destroyed by the text of the Constitution itself and by Supreme Court precedent. And yet their theory of the Second Amendment is killing Americans.
Also posted a video, an image actually, it was an image on social media. This is the one with the baseball bat. Okay, I'm not going to show it because it's been deleted. Does the country support Trump wielding a baseball bat, threatening mayhem and calling Alvin Bragg an animal? Is that what we want to see in a presidential candidate? How do you think independents in this country will react? He can't win an election without independence.
Right, but
he's got 30% of the Republican Party as his base. He may get them, but if he doesn't have the independence, he can't win. Okay, I'll return to my original question.
Okay.
How do you think Americans feel about a presidential candidate wielding a baseball bat prior to a possible indictment and calling his judicial opponent an animal?
Now, how do you think we feel?
And we're joined now by Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez. It's great to have you here, Congressman, in person.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I want to start on the conversation we're just having here because this is your home state of Texas where the former president spoke last night. When he walked on stage, he played a recording made by some of those who were being prosecuted for attacking the Capitol on January 6th. He also had footage seeming to glorify the attack that day. He's calling for protests. He said things like death and destruction if he's indicted. I know you've supported him in the past. Do you support statements like this? So you had endorsed the former president back in November 2022. Do I understand what you just said means you are also open to other candidates? I just want to button this up because I hear what you're saying in terms of policy and substance, but what the former president was talking about was not policy or substance. Don't you see some danger from lionizing those who are being prosecuted for breaking the law and attacking the place where you and other lawmakers work? I mean, isn't that part of it something that must give you pause? So I hear that you still support him. It's interesting because you were such an independent voice within the Republican Party. I mean, you've stood apart from your party in a number of things on this program. You've taken stands. You supported expansion of background checks. The Texas GOP censored you because of your support for gay marriage, a bold vote, other things regarding immigration. But this is a line that you feel you can't cross when it comes to criticizing what the former president did with lionizing January 6th attackers, including those who attacked law enforcement as they did on that day. That part has to bother you. Look, they were singing last night as a walk-on song for the former president of the United States. 17 of the 20 inmates held in that jail were accused of assaulting law enforcement.
Yeah, look,
that's a walk-on song. Okay, well, let's talk about the...
I actually think when it comes to subpoena compliance, we should follow the Jim Jordan standard. So this is our chairman. Paul and all is here, everyone here today. People at the Department of Justice, the Department of Education who are doing important work to claim they are out of compliance when he himself is currently out of compliance. You pull off a public stunt to try and open the libs, and what you did was you brought in a guy who allegedly shot 2 people and killed one of them. That's where the trust deficit is. So you can play your games, conduct your stunts. We're here to get it done. Thank you. Ms. Foster, you think a 10-year-old would choose to carry?
In a 10-year-old case, first of all, the Ohio...
No, my question is, would a 10-year-old choose to carry a baby?
In the Ohio case, the Ohio Attorney General said that abortion would have been justified.
Focus on the question, please. Would a 10-year-old choose to carry a baby?
I cannot...
Do you think a 10-year-old should choose to carry a baby?
I believe it would probably impact her life, and so therefore it would fall under any exception and would not be an abortion.
Wait, it would not be an abortion if a 10-year-old with her parents made the decision not to have a baby that was the result of a rape? Jim Jordan called a 10-year-old rape victim a liar. A 10-year-old rape victim was called a liar by the ranking member of this committee. And I know that he did that because he hates the president. It's clear every day from his statements and the statements from MAGA Republicans that they don't like Joe Biden, so they're going to call him a liar. That's fine. But what is worse is the reason that he did it is because he doesn't like what that rape victim represents. Threats are being carried out to local volunteers on school boards all over America. And apparently, the majority is here today to defend those who are making those threats. Taking time away from hanging out with the January 6th defendants at the D.C. jail, they're here today to defend threats like this. A threat that says, it is too bad that your mama is an ugly communist. If she doesn't quit or resign before the end of the year, we will kill her. But first, we will kill you. That was a threat sent to a child. These guys are defending that threat. They don't believe law enforcement has any business investigating that threat. I don't know what happened to the Republican Party that sided with law enforcement and law and order and public safety, but we're here today because they believe that threat is okay and no one in law enforcement should investigate it. When George Bush and the FBI and local law enforcement stopped terrorist attacks in America, we didn't say, that was George Bush's terrorist crisis. No, we said, we caught the bad guys, but they can't do that. It's just anything to own Biden, to own the Democrats. And I'm sorry if we don't just rubber stamp this oversight plan, but there's a trust deficit here. And it's not a reflex, it's a response. There's a trust deficit here.
If a 10-year-old became pregnant as a result of rape and it was threatening her life, then that's not an abortion. So it would not fall under any abortion restriction in our nation.
Ms. Warbelow, are you familiar with disinformation?
Yes, I am.
Did you just hear some disinformation?
Yes, I heard some very significant disinformation.
Why don't you tell me about that?
Yes, an abortion is a procedure. It's a medical procedure that individuals undergo for a wide range of circumstances, including because they have been sexually assaulted, raped in the case of the 10-year-old. It doesn't matter whether or not there's a statutory exemption. It is still a medical procedure that is understood to be an abortion.
And to your point, Christina, we have to elect more America First Republicans that have the spine and the backbone to follow through and get this done. I'm fed up with a Republican Party that will not fight the fight and stand up for the American people. We need to end that party completely. That means Mitch McConnell. That means others like Lindsey Graham and others who don't stand up and fight for the American people and America first.
No, our biggest threat are high-level politicians that work in the United States government, like Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, Biden. Justice Department.
Hey, look at what we did. Look at what he's doing. Look at what we had. Look at what he's doing. And I think for President Trump to spend 80% of his time complaining about court cases instead of just looking at his own record and what he would have done. Let me tell you what I would have done to SVG. Let me tell you what I would have done over in to Syria if our guys got hit for the 74th time and twice in 2 days. He does that. Or other candidates do that, they're going to be unbelievably successful because that's going to be the conversation at the kitchen table. Instead, the President of the United States, the former President of the United States, opened up with January 6th video, which is insane. He should be running from that, period. I don't care his point of view. That is not a good thing for him. I thought that was absolutely awful. Even though he is winning in the polls, that will not help.
Now, I don't know about you, but I find it hilarious just how uncomfortable each of Kilmeade's co-hosts looks. I mean, go back, watch it again. It's amazing. And they are completely speechless by the end. But don't expect that brief display of principle to stick. Fox is really just shifting its loyalty from Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis. Republicans would like you to believe the myth that there are two Republican parties, one destroyed by Trumpy MAGA brain rot, and one where there are still adults in the room. This is, of course, a lie, and it should be called a lie at every opportunity. Donald Trump's madness is the Republican Party, because despite the craziness of Trump's Waco rally, not a single major Republican elected official raised their voice to condemn it. And this was an event where Donald Trump stopped his own rally to play a song recorded by the jailed January 6th insurrectionists. And no, I'm not kidding. The GOP is leaving no room for debate about what they'll do if Trump wins the White House in 2024. The inmates will be running the show, and in some cases, that's going to be literally true. That's a terrifying thought for our democracy. Unfortunately, it's also a realistic one.
And in fact, if you look at illegal immigration, let's look at CBP encounters. You can see 500,000, 500,000, it drops to the lowest level, and boom, what happens? You show up, and that red line is you. That red line is Joe Biden. And you're claiming nothing happened. Oh, gosh, this was here before us. No, you made the decision to allow this to happen. Let me ask you, we now have over 5.5 million people who've entered this country illegally under Joe Biden. How many murderers have you released into America?
Senator, I'm not aware of any murderer whom we've...
So you don't know?
Senator, let me say something.
Do you know?
If you take a look at...
No, you don't get to give a speech. Do you know how many murderers you've released?
I'm just trying to answer your question.
How many rapists
Senator.
have you released?
Senator, I'm trying to answer your question.
You can answer, I know or I don't know.
Senator, any individual who poses a public safety threat...
How many child molesters have you released?
...and removed into the United States, from the United States.
Oh, so your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million. Is that your testimony?
Mr. Chairman, may I have the opportunity
No, you may not. You may answer my question.
You're not
Is that your testimony, yes or no?
Senator, you're not allowing me to answer your question.
I am allowing you to answer. I'm not allowing you to filibuster.
If you take a look at the pace of immigration in 2018 to 2019...
You're refusing to answer. Let's move on. Let's move on to gotaways.
Yeah.
These are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing. Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator, we are taking it to the cartel.
How many children have been sold into sex slavery? Do you know how many children have been sold into sex slavery?
To an unprecedented degree.
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now, your behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet. If you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis, it's a disgrace, and you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
Claiming 1 minute chairman time. Mr. Secretary, would you like to respond to any of those questions?
What the senator said was revolting. I'm not going to address it.
Mr. Allen, based on these statistics, I would like to talk to you about some other things that are going on here in Washington, D.C., specifically an initiative that you led. In November of 2022, you led the charge to reform D.C.'s crime laws. Is that correct?
I chaired the committee that proposal came
You led this charge, yes, sir. And these changes are now law here in D.C., correct?
Do you mean the revised criminal code?
Yes.
No, those are not the law.
Those are not the law.
The revised criminal code was rejected by...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'll talk to Mr. Allen.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Allen, did you or did you not decriminalize public urination in Washington, D.C.? Did you lead the charge to do so?
No, the revised criminal code left that as a criminal charge.
Did you lead the charge to decriminalize public urination in Washington, D.C.?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever vote in favor of decriminalizing public urination in Washington, D.C.?
The revised criminal code that was passed by the
Did you ever
council
support?
kept it as a criminal offense.
And you support this?
I voted for it, yeah.
You voted to keep it as a criminal offense.
That's correct. The full council did.
We have records that show that you were in favor of removing that criminal offense and allowing public urination.
No,
Is that something that you intend to pursue in the future?
No, the legislation you're referring to that came from the Criminal Code Reform Commission changed public urination from a criminal to a civil offense. The council then changed that to maintain it as a criminal offense at the request of the mayor.
Thank you. I yield.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever seen someone more focused on urination. Now, right off the bat, I have to say, it sure is ironic to hear how concerned Lauren Boebert is about the criminalization of exposing yourself in public, considering she was present when her husband was arrested for exposing himself to 2 young women at a Colorado bowling alley. He pleaded guilty to public indecency and lewd exposure after that incident and was sentenced to 4 days in jail with a subsequent 2 years on probation. So yeah, I guess it makes sense why Lauren Boebert is really concerned if it's still a crime to expose yourself in public. But it continues because she kept trying to talk about public urination, even thinking that a Democratic congresswoman was talking to her when she was talking to the witness.
We've been addressing a number of really serious concerns that our constituents have. They're choosing to waste our time by meddling in the District of Columbia and talking about public urination over and over. Just want to make sure, do you have anything additional you want to say about public urination? Now's your time.
I do.
No, not you. I'm talking to, it's not your time. It's a question to these people who have come here. Do you have anything additional to say regarding public urination?
I didn't think it was possible to get secondhand embarrassment through a computer screen. After watching that, I recognized I was wrong. This person has been in Congress for years now and still doesn't know the basic rules of procedure during a committee hearing. But that's not the only example of her not knowing how to do her job. In fact, according to the congressional record, Lauren Boebert has failed to sponsor a single successful piece of legislation during her entire time in Congress thus far. She hasn't introduced a single bill with bipartisan support. And instead of doing anything to, rectify that and get something done for once, she does things like posting videos of herself doing cartwheels in the halls of the Capitol after a school shooting that killed 3 9-year-olds. Yep, your tax dollar is hard at work. Consider, too, Lauren Boebert had the worst performance for a Republican House member in the 2022 midterm cycle relative to the lean of her district, and instead of trying to moderate herself, she's doubling down on the insanity.
We started the debate by joining Congressman Thomas Massie in supporting an amendment to the bill to abolish the federal Department of Education. Our public schools should have local control, not a centralized federal government pushing curriculum that sways way far away from reading, writing, and arithmetic. 161 Republicans voted to get rid of the Department of Education, but we still had 60 Republicans join every Democrat to defeat that amendment. The unfortunate reality is that our federal government is going to continue to have a big say on pushing drag shows, gender ideology, critical race theory, and all this other woke BS.
Yes. The problem with Congress is that we couldn't get more than 161 Republicans to sign onto a proposal by a high school dropout to abolish the Department of Education. Got it. And let's just point out the fact that Boebert is harping on about the threat posed to kids by drag shows when children are literally being gunned down by AR-15s in their classrooms. But don't worry, she's finally found the root cause of school shootings: COVID safety rules.
Nobody in Washington wants to talk about the root cause of this stuff. Nobody wants to talk about...
No, they're still trying to figure out the root cause of the border.
Right.
They can't figure that out.
Right, and now they're saying that, and I mean, to me, these lockdowns really impacted people's mental health, especially adolescents. I mean, I see so many folks who, you almost want to wake them up out of the lockdown mentality. I mean, are we going to look back 10 years from now and say, gosh, these lockdowns actually increase violence among young people, potentially even school shootings?
Well, I think you and I are saying that now.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait 10 years to say, look at the impact that these lockdowns have. We said them 3 weeks into this. We said, okay, we did our 15 days. Slow the spread. We've done our time. Let's open back up. And there were states like Colorado who stayed shut down. And this was absolutely dangerous to our children.
And I'm not sure if Republicans are aware, but every school in America is open and has been for a long time now. And that was made possible thanks in part to the American Rescue Plan, which funded schools, vaccines, and other measures to get kids back in school safely. A bill that every single Republican voted against. And as you can imagine, that wasn't the only depraved take that Lauren Boebert has with regard to schools. Here she is in 2018 calling 15,000 gun deaths per year in America a drop in the bucket while driving 40 miles to counter-protest Colorado students demanding an end to school shootings.
So I am on my way to Carbondale, Colorado. There's supposedly an organized march, the March for Our Lives, that's going to take place. And I'm really interested to see if people know what they're marching for. I guess this is supposed to be the beginning of people speaking out to take away our Second Amendment rights. And I'm not happy about it. Do you know how many gun-violent deaths there are, gun-related deaths there are in America per year? 15,000. A drop in the bucket, I'd say. So, I left Rifle, Colorado. I'm not going into shooters right now. I'm going to Carbondale, and I'm going to see what these people really believe. If they know what they're marching for, if they know that they are marching against their rights. They are marching saying, hey, I have a right I don't want. Take it away from me. Get rid of this. I want the people around me to not be able to protect themselves, to not be able to defend me. I don't know, I'm driving here, and I think this is kind of similar to driving on speakerphone, so I guess I'm safe. But I was thinking, my government requires me to wear this. I have to wear this to protect myself. And I can't have my 9mm to protect myself? I don't think so. I don't think so. Not today. No.
Not for nothing, but if you're comparing your seatbelt to an AR-15, you might have lost the plot. And look, I know that we all know that Lauren Boebert is not a smart person, but she's a person who wields power, a lot of power in the Republican Party. And the fact is that she is being enabled by Kevin McCarthy and other Republican leaders. So if they want to make her and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz the faces of that party, far be it from me to whitewash their lunacy. So if Republicans want to empower people like this, we should let the rest of the voters in America, people who overwhelmingly support common sense, popular policy positions, know exactly what they get when they cast their ballot for Republicans. Because it's not the fiscal conservatism or states' rights that the GOP pretends it is the far-right, extremist, unqualified lunatics like Lauren Boebert.